Buddy, this is Saad for the Sad Truth. Yesterday on my Twitter feed, I saw a tweet from a law professor by the name of Oren Kerr, wherein he referenced a recent study that looked at the political affiliations of law professors. And so I thought that I would cover some of the key findings from that study. Now, some of you might remember that earlier this year, I covered a similar study, but covering a broader number of disciplines. So this is covered in the Sad Truth 328, which you see here, titled Searching for the Elusive Republican Professor on American University Campuses. And one of the authors of that study, and another study that I've often referred to when discussing the lack of political and intellectual diversity on university campuses, is Professor Dan Klein, who was then my guest earlier this year as well. So please check out the Sad Truth 328 and 329 if this particular issue interests you. So continuing this tradition of documenting the lack of intellectual and political diversity on university campuses, today I thought that I would cover some of the key findings of the following paper. So this is the Legal Academy's Ideological Uniformity. That's the title of the paper. Here you see the authors in question. If you'd like to access the paper in question, I've provided you with a link to the paper so you can, cover, if you're interested, for example, in the methodological details, you can do so. All I'm going to do is take a few of the key points from the paper, specifically various tables and figures, and simply comment on them. And as you'll see, the same pattern that's been uncovered in other studies that have looked at this issue manifest themselves again, namely that there's an extraordinary tilt in terms of the distribution of political affiliations when it comes to academics, in this case, when it comes to legal academics. So in their paper, in Table 1, they offer a set of studies that have addressed this general issue within the legal profession. So here I won't go in details over each of them. Cardiff and Klein, by the way, is the paper that I've often cited. This is again Dan Klein, who was my guest in the Sad Truth 329. So here you've got 75% liberals, 80% Democrats, 81% Democrats, 80% consider themselves to be Democrats, 86% consider themselves to be liberal. So you're certainly talking about roughly 4 out of 5, if not more, of legal scholars consider themselves to be of one particular political persuasion. But now to look at some of the specific findings from the paper in question, and again, I won't go into all the methodological details. All that matters for the current purposes is to look at some of the overriding findings. So here you've got the breakdown of donations to all political candidates, or specifically here to presidential candidates. And as you'll see, to all candidates, roughly 75.7% are to Democrats. And when it gets to presidential, it's almost 90%. And so if we look at specifically political donations as the measure of your political affiliation, then the data is quite clear. The authors in question use a metric called the CF score, which again you can, if you're interested in the details, you can check it out in their paper. It's basically a measure to capture your political leanings, and the more negative it is, the more negative the score, the more quote liberal you are, and if you're on the positive end of the spectrum, then you're more conservative. Let's look at, without needing to worry about the specific numbers, blue means liberal, red means conservative. Here are the various law schools, top law schools, Yale, Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, and so on. There's my alma mater right here, Cornell. Well, geez, I wonder if I could see any pattern here. You basically have George Mason that doesn't fit the liberal bias. You have Pepperdine that's roughly 50-50. And you have, which other ones? I guess Brigham Young University is also roughly 50-50. So there aren't too many schools that don't exhibit, I mean, never mind a slight tilt. I mean, you're talking extraordinary tilt towards the faculty, the law faculty being so-called more liberal. What I thought was particularly interesting in this paper, and I only perused it very quickly. I didn't, read every word. But one of the findings that really jumped out at me is when they broke down the political, leanings, or the pattern of political leanings as a function of which particular area of law the professor specialized in. And oh yeah, get ready. This is going to be good. So which fields do you think are those the ones that are going to exhibit the greatest amount of sort of political leaning bias? Of course, it's going to be the ones that are typically rooted in activism, that are laden with ideological biases. Very much like how, if you look across disciplines, sociology and women's studies is going to have a much greater bias when it comes to the Democrat to Republican ratio, more so than fields where the possibility of having an intrusion of bias is less likely to happen, say engineering. Well, the same thing happens within the law, right? So fields that are, tax law, or real estate law, or antitrust law is going to have less political bias than all the touchy-feely stuff. So here we go. This is the list. I know you probably can't see it well or read it too well, but that's what I needed to do to fit it all on the screen. This is listed based on the extent to which it is left-leaning or liberal, and then all the way to lesser so. By the way, you notice that even the least left-leaning, the most conservative ones, still have a negative score. So military law and estate planning, oil and gas, right? Securities regulation, sports law, accounting, corporate finance, right? This is where some of these social justice warrior stuff is less likely to make its way into one's thinking. But then at number one, oh yes, what would we do? Hammurabi is probably turning in his grave right now. For those of you that don't understand that reference, this Hammurabi's Code, the oldest known legal code, I believe, in the world. I actually talk about Hammurabi's Code in my first book, The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, where I take some of the codes from several thousand years ago and demonstrate how an evolutionary lens can understand why the codes were of that particular form. So if some of you are interested in the nexus of legal thinking and evolutionary theory, might want to check chapter 1 of my 2007 book. But in any case, not surprisingly, at number 1, feminist legal theory. Oh yes. Poverty law, well, of course, there are all sorts of ideological biases that manifest themselves when it comes to, what is the root cause of poverty, how should we alleviate it, and so on. Women and the law. Critical race theory, of course, that's my main man, Barack Obama, who was a big proponent of that. And I think at Harvard, his favorite professor was a specialist in critical race theory. Then, of course, immigration law, which is itself laden with all sorts of ideological activism and biases. Welfare law, human rights. So anyways, if you look at the, of course, feminist legal theory, women in the law, critical race theory, these are all very much the types of fields that you would expect the social justice warriors to be present in. And so the same pattern seems to manifest itself. Fields that are very much founded in cold, hard facts are less likely to be parasitized by some of these biases. Now, again, you might say, well, so what's wrong if most professors are so-called liberal? By the way, again, the way the term liberal is used here is not necessarily the way I would use the term liberal, right? Many of these liberals, I would call them faux liberals, because many of the positions that they hold are perfectly inconsistent with what a truly classical liberal person would view as liberal. But in any case, uh, if you're thinking, well, so what's wrong with that? I mean, professors are smart. The old canard professors are smart, and therefore, of course, they're going to be of one political persuasion more than the other because that's what smart people do. Because the other political group is just made up of a bunch of, evolution denying hicks who sleep with their sisters. Well, of course, that's profoundly idiotic. Imagine if you're a student and you'd like to take a position that would probably be construed as non-liberal when it comes to the death penalty. You'd like to discuss in some criminal law course why you think that morally and ethically, if not legally, the death penalty should be something that is on the books. Well, are you likely to feel comfortable in espousing that position in a paper that you're writing or in a class lecture that you are taking part in? What about if you'd like to talk about Trump's recent executive order regarding immigration and how the federal courts are coming in and intervening with that order, and you'd like to argue a position that would not be construed as the politically correct position? Are you likely to speak? What if you'd like to take a position on affirmative action that might not be in line with the politically correct zeitgeist that might be found in the hallways of the law school that you're attending? Are you willing to speak or take that position? So never mind the fact that in these types of disciplines, you would want people who come from different perspectives to be part of the discussion. But the very banal reality of self-censorship, if you are, a student who's simply trying to get his or her degree so that you could go on and start your career, well, you could either speak your mind, speak your conscience, realizing that you're likely to create not only enemies amongst your student cohorts, but amongst your professors who are grading you, or you'll keep quiet, you'll self-censor in exactly the ways that I described in one of my recent Saad truth clips that stems from my Manning Center talk that I gave earlier this year. So again, the issue of political diversity and intellectual diversity on campus couldn't be, there are very few issues that are more important than that particular one in terms of addressing the general atmosphere at our universities. We all benefit from being exposed to ideas that are contrary to the positions that we hold. And if we are intellectually judicious, then we listen to those ideas, and then if we disagree with them, we offer positions that hopefully rebut the ideas that we've been exposed to. But what we don't want is to create echo chambers where only folks who think like us are present. And this is exactly what this study is showing, that when it comes to law schools, it is one big liberal orgy. There you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this clip. If you have, please consider sharing it. And again, it would be much appreciated if you can, if you're in a position to do so, to contribute to my Patreon and or PayPal accounts.